And hello. Boo. Yes, back for tonight's broadcast. And just like Tuesday, we're Fuzzbutt. Ugh. And hello, Lauren. I told you this was going to happen, didn't I? Ugh. Hey, Kim! Yay! So, are you going to calm down? Ugh. That's Carlton, yeah. Shinju is sound asleep back over here. This is the Velcro Kitty, aka the one that begs me to pet his belly. Aren't you? No red collar, yeah. Ralph is sitting right in the doorway just staring. Now, can I put you down so we can get to actually doing the show? Oh. Okay, Carlton, what are you doing? No. Yeah. He's rolling himself over. He wants this. Isn't that right, little buddy? Yeah. Oh, now he wants me to do this. Yeah. Okay, I figure if I give in to him now, he'll let me do the show without interrupting. Isn't that right? Yeah. Okay. Can I put you down now? Put you on the floor? There you go, little buddy. Okay. Sorry about that. Kim, Lauren is actually the player for whom I am sculpting this figure, just to let you know. I am sculpting a female elven nature priest. Not a druid, a cleric with the nature domain. So, I should have to note, I thought this was funny. Last night during the game, our party was invited to a fancy dinner. And half of the male characters showed up wearing a tuxedo gown. Like what's-his-name wore at the Oscars. Okay. I'm just getting this ready. So what we're going to start with is... This is my basic female figure. And it looks kind of awkward right now because of the proportions. It looks a lot better once it's fully sculpted. Now, one of the first things that we're going to do, I go here to this little slider, and let's turn her into an elf. Yep, human elf, human elf. I mean, you're not a dragonborn, or dwarf, or a halfling. You're an elf. So, one of the things I noticed was that in the picture you gave me, this one, she's holding a slightly curved, well, I guess that would almost be a short sword, in her right hand, kind of the point coming out the back of her hand. Do you want that sort of short sword? Does it matter? Does it have to be curved? Could it be a straighter weapon? Could it be, you know, something like that? And Ralph! This is Ralph. You can tell by the collar. Ralph, you know that when I have the tablet in my lap, you're not supposed to get up here, right? Yeah. Okay, a longsword. Alright, right now the weapons that I have that could be considered a longsword are pretty long. It's a pretty long list. Just as an example, I'm going to pull in a couple of these. Let's see. See, the long D&D has the long sword, and they've got a short sword. They don't have the mid-length swords, the arming swords. But I mean, there's also, just as an example, where is it? There's what's called the backsword, which is the Scottish. What? What? Anyway, it's the Scottish answer to the rapier. Much heavier and broad. Do you mind? Do you mind? Ralph, I'm about to put you back down on the floor. You understand? Do you mind? I'm trying to do this for one of the people in the game. Come on. Come on down. Go on down. Good boy. No, the cats just want to show off is what it is. Okay, the backsword probably wouldn't fit. It's not very elven styled. Whereas there's let's see, the falchion would be more of a scimitar style. That's a great sword. Scimitar, no, come on. Well, there's the Kriegsmesser, which that can be shrunk down. This is what can be considered basically a German-style civilian longsword. It's got that bit on the back of the guard to protect the hand. When actual longswords, there's this version, which doesn't have a fuller and has kind of an interesting little guard. This version, which actually the blade, it's got a wider blade than it. This version, which is a pretty much standard generic type. There's the Celtic style, which is more of a leaf shaped. Do I have any others? And then there's kind of like the Viking style sword. And if you really don't like any of those, we can actually go in and make a new one. Whoop, that wasn't what I meant to do. There. Which one was it? The Celtic sword, please? Okay. Alright, so this longsword Celtic style. It's what makes it Celtic style isn't just the leaf blade, it's the humaniform guard. It's going to sound kind of obscene, but these swords that the Celts made were designed so that the cross guard, the top of the pommel was like the head of a man. His hands raised up, and then his torso was the handle, and then his legs were spread, and the blade was his, yeah. But, you know, that's beside the point. And what we're going to do is we're going to give her the proper female. The females have a different hand pose for these things because their thumbs are jointed differently than what the males have. Also, since it's been elvenized, we need to move it slightly. So we need to bring it up this way. So it fits in the hand a bit better. Okay. Now, is that too big, or do you want to look maybe a little bit smaller? Because that's more of what the classic longsword is, which is technically a bastard sword. Making the blade thinner makes it harder to print, and it tends to break. Just to show you what it looks like on a figure, I'm going to go ahead and pop it big, and then see, proportions are different on figures. They don't look right when they're real proportion. This is that same sword on the figure of an elven knight. And yes, he's still not finished painting. Blah. Mm-hmm. That's what I'm saying. Is the weapons look big on first glance, but when they're actually on the figure and shrunk down to back, they look better because you can see the shape easier. Okay. So one of the things we've got to do, while I'm thinking about it, we've got to sit here. Oh, forgot to click it to that, and move the center into the center of her hand, so that we can. Yeah, that's good. Now take it and give it a rotation that way, and then rotation that way, so it'll be pointing out properly out the back of her hand with that pose. Okay. We can still make it a little bit smaller to make it fit the character a little bit better. Does that look about right? Okay. Now, we're going to hide it. Now, looking at the image, the cloak, I'm not going to be really able to do the hood because of the way everything is all shaped up. The hood would most likely probably be better laying back. I'm assuming you do want the cloak, though. Oh. Sorry. There we go. But yeah, looking at the cloak, we can put the cloak on. The hood would be best probably done laying back on the cloak rather than pulled up because, among other things, the ears are kind of a little bit far back because when I do the hair, it gets really thick. Okay. Alright. Now, let me go ahead. I go back in here. I go to clothing. And we're going to load in the cloak. Now, right now, it just looks kind of thick and goofy. But when we go to sculpt, one of the things that we do is we smooth out the top of this. We're going to hide the cloak for now. We're going to pose the cloak later. We're also going to hide the sword. Now, the next thing that we're going to do is, when we look at this picture, if you drew a line from the hips, the line would be going from up, down this way, down to here. Whereas the shoulders are up here and going down that way. I'm exaggerating the line a little bit, but you see what I mean. We're going to start with the hip. So we're going to tilt it that way. We're also going to bend it slightly forward because she's got her back arched a little bit, and for that to really work with balance, you got to have the hips slightly forward. Now, this leg, side to side, bringing it down. And then this one comes forward a bit and side to side a bit. And we're actually going to have to exaggerate that side to side of the hip. Okay. We're going to go to the front view so that we can see how we're doing here. Okay, we need to bring it a bit more, because most of her weight will be on this leg eventually. We're going to bend the foot up, and we're going to bring it that way. Now this one, we're going to bring it a bit more side to side. We're going to bring it a lot more side to side so we can hit Control D, and this little very faint, well, you'll see it, you can see the line right through the foot right here. Hit Control, you can see it there. And now we're going to bring this foot leg back down until it's right about the heel, which is barely visible. It's right about there. Now, we're going to twist the thigh a little. And we're going to twist the calf a little. We're also going to lock side to side because your leg cannot move side to side. Then we're going to bend the foot and twist it until it's flat. There. Now, perspective view. Okay, we also need to go ahead and lock side to side here. We're going to now pin the feet in place. And with the hip, we're going to move the hips backwards just a little bit. Oh, we got to do one other thing. I forgot to change this bend parameter settings. Can't go negative because that causes weirdisms. Okay, now we're gonna bring it back just a bit so that she's more over her feet. Now we're gonna take the abdomen. The abdomen is gonna go side to side quite a bit. In the picture, we really can't see below the knee. I mean, it could be that her knee is bent. It could be that her knee cup is just rounded. I can't. What I can do is bend this back a little. There, her knee is bent ever so slightly while keeping her foot on the ground. Now, the chest is also going to go side to side and then bending back a little. But it's also twisting just ever so slightly that way. Now, her left arm, the collar actually goes back a little bit from the look of things. And then the arm comes down and is twisted so that when it bends the forearm, well, not twist, I need to bend it. Forearm, it comes forward a bit. Twist that. Now don't be afraid of the bends not being proper. Okay, bent it a little bit too far. And then bend this. Okay, unbend it too far this time. Now we're going to take the thumb okay, hand was bent too far. And we're going to bend the fingers a little bit. Oh, that's finger 1. I need finger 2 to bend. Yeah, because of the size, we can't really have the individual fingers bend the way she's got them. We can twist those fingers. The end result being it looks like they're bent at different amounts. And we can also let's untwist that. Yeah. And then this arm, we're going to twist the shoulder down. We're going to move it back a bit. We're going to twist the forearm. We're also going to bend the actual collar. Actually, no, we need to bring it up a little and then bend this down. And we're going to side to side the hand so that the blade is kind of pointing up. Okay, I see a problem with the chest. The chest is twisting in the wrong direction. Also, that's a bit too much twist on the forearm. And a little bit too much bend. Also not enough bend on the upper arm. Let's change the angle here. Alright, now the head is kind of, right, the neck is a little bit more straightened up than this is. And the head is kind of almost looking down. One thing is, a lot of this is just your basic shapes. We are going to be tweaking this when we get into the actual sculpting. Including the ear shape. Now, the cloak, as you can see, we definitely need to change its pose. It's flowing more to the right, to her right in the picture. So let's go ahead, expand from selected. We're going to change that. Okay. Center cloak 1 is back in the back here. We're going to X-rotate it out a little bit. We're going to rotate it side to side a little. We're going to actually X-rotate it even more, and then we're going to take the bottom and bring it back in, and a little bit more side to side, a little bit of rotation this way. Then we're going to take the side here and we're going to rotate it back to give it a bit more of a curve. And same thing here. Okay. And okay. I think the stance would look a little bit better if this foot right here was probably a little bit more out over here. But it is your decision. Do you want to straighten out that leg or not? Okay. Well, the thing is, right now, it's now or never. The only thing left before we go into the sculpting is choosing a base. And once we start sculpting, no kitty. See, even Shinju saw him. Once we go back to, sorry about that. Once we go back to, into sculpting, that's it. Meanwhile, the bases. I got a lot of bases you can choose from. Now, some are purely science fiction, but most are okay. Now, here's the first batch of bases. As you can see, things like this metal grating are probably sci-fi, but we've got some ancient tile work. Far side over here is demonic organic stuff, gravel, and then cracked earth. Magic circle in the middle. Mixed terrain and asteroid. And then I've got these, which cobblestone and fancy tile in the center of this row, and then stone, wood, grass, and then high-tech tiles for the bottom row. So which of these bases do you think you want to choose? Okay, so the wood planks. Okay. Let me hide this so I can be seen in here. And all that is let me go ahead and hide, close the cloak, file, import, and that would be base planks. Accept. Now that's not a good spot for them, so we're going to the front view. And we're going to drag it down, and here we can more easily see that floor plane. We're going to drag it down until the feet are slightly into the planks. And we're going to drag it over. Now we're going to go on the top view. Actually, it looks like it's a pretty good on the front to back. Oh no, we can move it back a little. And over a little bit more. There. And then the next thing that we do is we give it a good spin. Random spin. Just to have it at a slightly more random angle. Okay. This is just to give us some raw base geometry to sculpt on. Okay, make sure we don't have the handle or the hand penetrating the cloak, and we don't. Now what we do is we hide the sword, hide the cloak, hide the base. And we export to Nature Priest. Export the body. Export the sword. Export the cloak. And then export the base. And then we go to ZBrush. Now we're about to actually start our sculpting. As I scratch my back. Okay. Import. No, we don't need any of those. Nature Priest. Oh, wrong one. I need to import body, not. Okay, and then we draw it in. Hit edit. Frame. Her arms are a little thick. We are going to be fixing that. Now we go here and we append a subtool. And this is the next one's going to be the cloak. Then we append another subtool. And this one's going to be the sword. And then we append yet another subtool. And this one's going to be the base. And we're going to hide everything except for the main figure, because that's what we're going to be working on. Now, one thing we're going to do first is, did you want this outfit that's in this image? Okay, then the first thing that we're going to do, looking at it, okay, it's got cleavage, but it doesn't have underboob. So we're going to be smoothing out underneath. Oh, now I'm going to be using the tablet, which means, yes, I made a Green Lantern power battery stylus holder. I'm using the stylus. I'm going to be using smooth on the first couple passes over. We also need to reshape these to be a bit more natural. First couple passes over. And then we're going to inflate. And we're going to reduce the intensity so we can be a bit more precise about it. To make it look more like it's a supported breast and not some kind of mutant application. That's more up here and a little bit less over here. And a little bit more on the side here, because that's not how human body tissue reacts. A little bit flatter because she doesn't have implants, because the silicone hasn't been isolated yet. That's also sticking way too far forward. So we're going to go to use the move tool. We're just going to kind of grab it and kind of move it into a more natural position. Now, we're going to go back to the standard brush. We're going to hit this button so that it remembers the size of each brush. And we're going to run this smooth brush down the back of the upper arm. Actually, let's hide the torso there, because we don't want to really. And in here. We're also going to use inflate just ever so slightly on the insides. We want these arms to be more round and less. Let me smooth that out. And we want them to be more round and less tubular, or less flattened ribbon. Okay. We also need to smooth this out. Now, another thing we need to do that I've just noticed using Move Topological, make this a good bit bigger. We need to move the hand and the forearm out a bit. Just a bit. It was starting to poke through the butt. Now this means we got to take the sword and move it back a bit. Whoop, wrong one. I need to select the sword. There's the deformation. And let's move that back. And then let's move him over there just a bit. Yeah, there we go. Now we're going to hide the sword again. Next thing that we're going to do is we're going to do some reconstructive surgery on her face, because that's not a very pretty face. When I first made that elf morph, I really didn't know what I was doing. Alright, so we're going to use the move tool still. We're going to give her an actual jawbone. It's still going to keep more of an elven, slender face, but she's going to have an actual jawline. That's going in. Next, we're going to move the nose down a little, because that's a really unnatural looking nose. And then finally, we're moving the lower lip in. We're going to define the lower lip, yes, but okay. We're also now going to go back to regular move. I'm going to move the jaw in just a bit. Now, do you want her to have more of the rounded face of the picture, or more of a square-jawed face? We also have to tweak the ears. Like I'm gonna make them a little bit longer. I'm also gonna bring them up a bit. Okay. Let's shrink the mouse. And what we're going to do first, we're going to go back to inflate. And we're going to start just very gently bringing out the cheek area. Kind of hard to see at that angle. Yeah, there we go. We're also going to reduce some of the pointiness of this chin. That chin was a bit too pointy. And while I'm thinking about it, with a little bit of slash, kind of pull in underneath the lip and a little bit underneath the nose with very faint. Okay. And then we're going to kind of blend that right there. Now, it's still not a rounded face. We're going to smooth out the cheekbones ever so slightly. And then going back to inflate, going bigger, we're going to kind of pull out a thicker cheekbone to give her a more rounded face. And then a little bit of smoothing to even it all out. You can already see that that side's a bit rounder. We need to make the lower mouth a little bit less broad. But it's a lot less pointy. There we go. A much rounder face. I'm also going to do a little bit more. There's really not much more detailing on the ears that will be actually visible on the figure. One of the tests for will it be visible is I zoom it out to about that size. On my monitor, that's about the size of the figure. If it's not visible at this size, it's probably not really going to be visible on the figure. I mean, you can see the individual fingers. You can see the ears have a little groove in them, and you can see the eyes, nose, and mouth. But that's my usual watermark test. I wish I could make the ankles thinner, make them a little bit more feminine that way, but I can't because then it becomes structurally weak. Okay, now the next thing that we're going to do is her little maloa, a little leotard thing. And to do this, we're going to hide the arms and the hands. The reason why I'm able to make these parts suddenly vanish is because the geometry remembers what those body parts were in the original figure, and I can tell it to hide those body parts. Okay, so the next step is I'm going to come in from over the shoulder. Oh, I forget. Not yet. There's something I have to do first, and that is subdivide it several times to where it's 1.23. Okay, and then Dynamesh 768. Because right now, if we look at the geometry, we can see that while there's some nice, really small bits here, they get bigger. I mean, look right here. Compare the size of the wrist to the size of the thigh. The ones in the thigh are almost twice as big. So, by using Dynamesh, they all become evenly sized no matter where they are. Now it's at 904,000. Let me go ahead and give it one level of subdivision. And now I'm going to hide the arms and hands and fingers. And you'll notice that part of it vanished because that was part that was rubbing up against the arms. What that does, the reason for that is Dynamesh makes it a watertight mesh. Any place where the bits are touching or slightly overlapping, it makes it one surface. But now what we do is, like I said, we're going to come down from the top. We're going to come under to there. We are eventually going to come in and clean up the inside, but right now we're just doing the basic shape. And then it comes down, and it's actually going to come out. I need a different angle. There we go. I'm going to assume that it has the standard shape of the bathing suit that it looks like. And comes down back like that. Now looking at it, yeah, it does kind of go onto the hip. So it's not a completely G-string type bit. And we're going to come across this way. And down in underneath. We're going to clean up the thighs in just a minute. And then there. And now we're going to fill this in. And in here, the reason I'm doing this is what's called a mask. Under normal circumstances, anything that I have covered with this mask will not be affected by anything I do to the rest of the figure. Now, one thing we got to do now, we're going to unmask right here. I hate it when it does that. Right here, because it's got other bits covering that. We also need to connect over to the back. So we're coming back over this way. Now, there we go. And coming back over this way. Now, the next thing that we do is we extract that as the suit. And 0.02 is usually the size of a clothing seam. Except now, one thing that we're going to do, now that we've got it out, is we're actually going to kind of... Actually, yeah, it's time to start doing the detailing. But first, we've got to make this a bit more smooth. Now, we look again, and she's got like a leaf pattern coming over each breast. So we erase that, and we go to draw with transparency. So we can see where the cups are, but not, you know, what it is. So we're going to shrink this. Okay, so it's going to start off no. I need to make it smaller, more refined. We can now hide the Malwa, or Malloy, or whatever, however it's pronounced. I'm not sure. I'm not that much knowledgeable. Hide the swimming suit, and add on this. We're then going to sharpen the leaf bits. Make sure that, okay. Alright, so we're going to now shrink this a little. And we're going to, like I said, sharpen the leaf bits. Sorry, this is taking longer than I expected because I had a bump on my tablet. There we go. Now we got to, before we do anything, we got to change the thickness from 0.2 or 0.02 to 0.012. And that way, it actually does have a seam right around that. We'll do her pauldron and the sleeves and that in just a minute. We're going to do some detailing on this first. Dynamesh it to get it nice and smooth and relatively even. And then looking at the image again, we can see that there's almost like stained glass frames around those. So, well, we also see that we have to use that Move Topological tool on here. Move them just a little bit away from each other so they don't blend into each other like that. Okay, there we go. And now the next step is we're going to the Orb Cracks brush, but we're going to be adding instead of subtracting. Actually, no. Not the Orb Cracks brush. We're going to use the Layer brush. There it is. Turn off Lazy Mouse. Increase the intensity quite a bit. And shrink it a little bit more. And now what we're going to do is we're going to start off with our primary... We're going to start off with the primary outlines of the main leaf. On each side. Okay. Now we're going to shrink it just a little and reduce it just a bit, and we're just going to kind of draw in some details that may be a little small for... Whoop! Yeah, that's what I thought. We're going to do it this way. We're going to... And then, well, no, we're going to do it this way. We're going to... Then we go back in and go up to deformation, or go up to masking and invert. Now, whoop, no, that was a I dropped the tab. Now we're going to inflate it out until it's roughly similar in size. Let's blur the mask a little. There we go. Okay. Then there we go. And the next thing that we're going to do is on the Malloy, or on the Malloy itself, whatever, however you pronounce that. Dag nabbit. Good night, Kim. I'm sorry I missed you. I was busy drawing. Hey. Okay. So one thing to note is that there is a series of panels to this. And that's where we're going to go to where we're originally going to be doing on this. And one of the first ones is there's like a center panel here. We're going to be putting a little gemstone in there in a little bit. Okay. Now we have... Actually, we need to make this a little bit bigger. Okay. And then there we go. That's that. And then we're going to come up and over at about the waist. There is an edge line on there. Actually, undo that. We need to make it a lazy mouse because we need that nice smooth line. See how this line is a lot smoother than the previous one was? And then coming around here. Oh! Okay. Now, coming from here down to here, and from here down to there, and another one from here back to here. I'm going to assume that there is a similar set of patterns on the back. Just to give it some detail on the back as well. Now let's go ahead and put our mouse over the base so we can zoom out. And yes, this detail will print. It was basically, if you noticed, that one stroke was a different style than the other. Not hugely important. Okay, I'm going to do her pauldrons next. And to do that, we have to hide. Actually, before we do that, let's merge these into a single item. The entire swimsuit, so to speak, is now a single click. And what we're going to do now is we're going to do those pauldrons. So we're going to shrink the mouse again. Now, they appear to be mostly just like a line here and a line here. And we're going to continue around. Now let's make them all a little bit sharper. Okay. So anyway, so yeah, what did you think when like half the male members of the party decided to do the tux gown? It may not end up as large as the one in the picture, but... I'll be honest, I probably would have had Valandar do it too. That is, the character, not me. Except for the fact that he's a little traditional. Thus the fancy doublet instead of a tux gown. You know, he's of the mindset that he'd be far too embarrassed, and he doesn't have the chutzpah to pull it off because he's only got a charisma of like 10. Because remember, charisma is not appearance; it's charm and force of personality. He's kind of average. Which is why he never got anywhere as a fighter, straight as a pure fighter, because he could never command troops. Okay, now these are actually going to extract at 0.03, because these are big, thick pauldrons. Until they're a little bit more. Yeah. Now, next thing that we're going to do is we're going to add in those spiky bits. And it's kind of hard to see where the individual spikes are coming from because it's kind of abstract almost. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to actually grab the spikes and drag them out. I'm going to assume that, let's make them a little bit bigger because they're not going to be as, actually, yeah, we need to make this even bigger. They're not going to be as remarkably spiky as they are in the artwork, because that would make it extremely hard to print. And then we're going to pull one straight up. Yeah. And then one more kind of out from here. Actually, we're going to come back to that. Okay, we're going to pull one straight up and over. And then from here, out and over. Okay, I need to be a bit more here. I hate it when it decides to do the autosave in the middle of a stroke. Okay. Now, I'm going to use the slash tool, the oil cracks tool, the cracks tool, how that is, to draw on some of the other detailing on these things. Like, no. And then okay. Okay, that should be good enough for that for now. That's the pauldrons. And now we have the right arm bracer. Yeah, we're not going to have that full large double bit there because that's a bit much for printing. We're now going to have the right bracer. And to do that, excuse me, we're going to hide most of this. We're also going to hide the hip and each thigh and the abdomen, so we can access this forearm here. Well, the first thing we need to do is we need to line it up to be almost vertical. Okay. Actually, we need to kind of tilt it forward a little because of the angle on here. Okay, and now we're going to straighten up the arm again and bring it down to the rest of the wrist. And this is going to be extracted to 0.02. Except and then we're going to hide him, her. And I've got to get rid of that because that was supposed to have been okay. Now geometry, Dynamesh at 256, and we're gonna frame in and subdivide until it's about there. Okay. Now we're going to transparency, and it's got a whole lot of spiky bits and a couple coming forward. So I'm only going to put a couple on here because again, we need to make it printable. I'm going to come on here, come out and then up. Then I'm going to grab down here and bring down forward. And then actually no, that wasn't the right spot. I'm going to come here and bring it down and forward, and then here and bring it down and like that. And then we're going to grab here, come out, up. Then we're going to shrink the mouse a bit. We're going to come out and up just a little, just enough to get the impression. And just a little here. Because we want these details to actually be supported in the figure. And this one. Yeah. Hello, Patrick. Alright, so I'm pretty certain that the majority of the clothing is done now, except for the boots. Well, looking at it, she appears to be wearing two totally different kinds of boots. Both are thigh highs. Would you prefer one style over the other, or do you want that mismatched style? Okay. Alright, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to turn off the bracer. Actually, no, we're not. We're going to turn off the hands at the very least. this hand because it's kind of in the way of getting some of our detailing on the legs and this forearm. And then, okay, it kind of peaks to the outside. So what we're going to do is we're going to tilt it this way. And then we're going to draw on the mask here. Okay. So each one of these we're going to do separately. Actually, we're going to go ahead and erase it here. I'll show you why in a second. And this we're going to extract at 0.02. Accept. And come up here. Desolidify. Alright, now. Dimension 256. And we're not going to immediately start subtooling, detailing, and all that. Instead, we're going back to move real quick for a much larger brush. Increase intensity to 100, and then just start blending on the bottom until it kind of blends in to the rest of the leg. This is like if you put a strip of putty on the figure and then started smoothing it out with a burnishing tool or something. Okay, we're then going to subdivide. Shinju, get over here. Get over here. Come on. Good girl. We don't need you in interrupting the thing too. And then before we do anything else, we're going back here. Now, this seems to be more slanted from the front. And then, yeah. So what we're going to do is we're going to tilt it back like this just a bit. We're going to hide this hand because it's in the way. We're also going to hide this leg. Now, so we need to kind of bring it down a little. And we're going to draw this one here. And then oh, no. I know what I need to do. And then go back over here. No, that was too far. There we go. No, that didn't work. Let's just try. Okay. Okay, and then there, and there. Then I'm gonna shrink it. Yeah, come back here, mouse. Not mouse, but stylus. We're going to give it a bit of a peak. And then sharpen that peak. Okay, and this we're also going to extract. Accept. Erase these masks. And then Dynamesh of 512, or sorry, 256. And before we subdivide, start blending this in on the bottom. Okay. Now, frame out this a little bit. We're now going to subdivide this until it's nice and smooth. And we're going to do the same thing. Okay, we already did the same thing here. Now, we're going to merge down onto both. And geometry, Dynamesh. And now that it's done, we're going to come over here and we're going to use the smooth tool again, just a bit smaller, to smooth out these seams right here. And the same thing over here now. What you're hearing me triple clicking in the background is the number 1. That repeats the last stroke. So I can do this without getting carpal tunnel. Okay, looking back on it, we're going to use the Move Topological tool, or not tool, but brush. I'm going to grab back here and pull up a little. Then we're switching to the Seam 16 brush. What this does, okay, that's the one we want. That's the direction we want. Hide this leg. Okay, and we're going to basically come from here across here. Nope, because we need it stronger and a little bit larger. Okay, and then we're going to kind of bring a few more slashes around. No, that's too deep. And back up. And then like that. I don't really need to do any more. That gets the entire message across. We're going to be putting wrinkles on the back and front of the knees. Now, the other one has kind of a little I'm going to do it like this. And then one from here. Yeah. And then we're going to come back around to here, and it's going to follow this little scallops here. And then we're going to come from back here up just a little, and then back and around to here. Okay. That's her current state. Except for wrinkles at the back of the knee and at the ankles and toes, the clothing's pretty much done at this point. Well, and the cloak's separate. So, I mean, we also have to do her hair. Hello, Mark. And so let's hide the extra bits. And we're going to do her hair. Now, her hair is pretty much looks long and straight with a ponytail coming off the top back. Is that correct? Does she have the ponytail? Well, it's almost more of a top knot that's kind of poking through the hood. Okay, so just long straight hair. The drawing has it down to just past waist length. That's going to be problematic. Okay. I'll give her as long as I can make it. How does that sound? What do I do? Oh. That was to zoom in on her head. Now, the way we handled the hair is pretty much the same way we were handling the clothing. We're gonna draw on a mask and extract it out, and then we're gonna make it look like hair. Simple, yeah. That's like one of those. That's like that drawing tips. How to draw an owl. Draw an egg. Draw two eyes. Draw the rest of the owl. And I know all of y'all have seen that thing. Turn off the pauldrons and outfit for this. because we're going to be doing a lot of expanding of the geometry once we've finished blocking it all off. Okay. Don't worry, these will get stretched down a bit more than they are right now. These bits on the side of the sideburn area. Okay. Now we're going to extract this out at 0.01. Extract. Accept. Draw. Draw. Okay. Now, we're going to go to inflate first to try to build up this back area. I made a mistake. I've got to dynamesh it first. Okay, we're going to build up this back area and we're going to drag it down a bit lower. Okay. You want it straight and not wavy, right? Okay, so the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to this clay buildup brush, and I'm going to click this button right here, which means that it's not going to pass through the hair and go down to the opposite side. I'm going to shrink it down to about the size of general locks, and we're going to start drawing on, well, we're going to turn off laser mouse. And we're going to start drawing on, oh, I forgot. Yeah. Where the overall locks of hair will be. These are thicker than the actual and hair, because this is, like I said, it's just a lock, a cluster of hair, so to speak. And then we're gonna kind of come down like that. Now, this doesn't look good yet. Okay. Smoothing it out a bit. We're also going to use the move tool here at this point to kind of make it a little bit less bulbous headed and less Heidi, more general hair here. Okay. Now, we're switching to the slash tool. We need this up to about 15. And about there. Then, the first things is we're drawing down the center, kind of the part area. Whoop. And we're going to draw in a divisor on these locks. Now the reason we're doing it this way is because of painting. Some styles of sculpting pick up paint from a dry brush better. Others pick up paint from a wash better. With hair, we want to make sure that both styles work well for what we're doing. Okay, now we're going to switch to add. And we're going to sharpen out these locks. Actually, we need to go ahead and there we go. It's exaggerated again, but it ends up printing much better than first glance would assume. We're going to turn the pauldrons on. Okay, now one thing we got to do, excellent. I wanted to make sure that the spikes weren't. The first thing we're doing with this cloak is we're going to use the move tool to move the upper edges down. Whoop! No. Cloak! Bring it down underneath the pauldron. We're also going to smooth it a bit because we're going to be changing the hang wrinkles. Also, we're going to move it back so it's not, so it's coming up from underneath those pauldrons. Okay. Now we are going to subdivide it a few times till it's nice and smooth. And dynamesh it at 512. Okay, now, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to use clay buildup and make it a lot bigger. We're going to mimic the wrinkles on the back that would develop from hanging. And we're going to make it bigger with each wrinkle. Actually, way too strong for all of them. I'm going to bring this down and around. And it's going to, oh, it's going to come down from here and just kind of, oh. Okay, now we're going to smooth the top sides of all of these launched off by themselves wrinkles. And the ends of them. Okay. Then we're going to go back to slash. We're going to make it a good bit bigger. And we're going to make these wrinkles sharper on the bottom third. Because wrinkles follow gravity. Okay. Now the only piece of clothing missing is the hood, which we're going to do the hood by hiding the cloak and re-importing it. And once again, we're going to move everything down. We're going to extract our hood from this. Okay, let's lower this a little bit more. Okay, now the hood will simply be like that. And then we're going to extract this at 0.05. And then delete that. I'm going to smooth out this section here. With the move tool, we're going to grab the corners and pull them forward and in. Oh, wrong way. Yeah. Now, going back to clay buildup. We're going to build up first. Whoa, way too big. Build up here. And then we're going to use polish brush. Sub. And we're going to kind of polish this for the purposes of making it look almost hollow, because that's what it is hollow. Then with the slash brush, subtract them pretty deep. Let's hide the hair and the pauldrons. And we're going to go deeply in here. And then hitting 1. Zoom in. And blend out that. And then smooth that, and then add a bigger draw line around what will be the rim of the hood. Oh, I hit control by accident. So there's a button on the stylus that acts as hitting control, which changes the results. And then come over to refine it. Now we move just to kind of bring it up and make it clear that this is part of the, okay, frame out. Okay, and then we're going to subdivide that. And as far as I can tell for the outfit, all that's missing is wrinkles on the legs, on the boots. Okay. We're going to hide the cloak so we can get to the back of the boots better. We're going to do these strictly with the slash tool, because these are going to be small ones. We don't need that clay buildup. Okay. Now what happens is, since these legs aren't bent, first of all, I need to give this a bit of a dig. Oh, yeah, I tell if I was actually digging into it. Yeah. Now, what happens is we have like a little diamond shaped patterns for some of these, and dig a sharper wrinkle back inside it and then underneath it. It's going to be a little bit wider over here because it can be. Okay. Now, on the ankles, we're just going to be a little bit more abstract. One above, one in the middle, and one below. And then we're going to kind of divide in between these. And then the toes, one there, one there, one here, one here. And then just wrinkle, wrinkle, wrinkle. But if you're an adventurer, your boots are going to be wrinkled at the toe from all the walking you're going to do. Okay, frame out. And let's see here. Now, is there anything you can think of that you want done to the sword? Because this is otherwise pretty much mostly done. This is less than 2 hours of sculpting. Is there anything you want done to the sword? Any runes added on the blade? Oh, wrong button. Okay. Well then, set that down. And we're going to fuse it all into one big... So you think it's done, it's ready, right? Just as a one last double check before I collapse it down into something that can't be combined. Okay, so we're going to merge it all down. And there is one last thing I need to do real quick. It's on the face. As it is right now, that face is rather washed out. So what's going to happen is we're going to go ahead and re-emphasize the eyes. Why did I put... Using a mouse instead of a tablet is like using a spray can instead of an airbrush. Right. See how much more control I have with this tablet? And then we're gonna... Oh, no! We're also going to inflate her lower lip just a bit. Just a bit, because we want it to be paintable. Okay. Now, zoom out. And we are going to now Dynamesh it. This fuses everything together. Everything that's, intersecting geometry gets fused into a solid shape. And we have 3.5 million triangles in this solid shape. So, I go up here to Z plugin, because 3.5 million triangles is far too much for the slicer software to deal with. I mean, look at the base there. It's got the planks. We got everything. So what we're going to do now, we're going to decimate. It's pretty detailed. We're going to decimate it to 100,000 triangles and see how it looks. What this does is it calculates what polygons can I remove. I being the computer. So on the flat underside of that base, there'll be just a few really big polygons. But in areas like the leaf inserts over her breasts are going to be very small polygons. When it says computing, please wait, that means it's got an error. So we do a quick smooth. It says infinitesimally, and then, yeah, this is empty. And it's taking this long for Task Manager to open. Yeah. With paints like this is as a handle to hold the figure with while you're painting her. That's my opinion. They're great for large-scale things, like, Stonehenge bits. But for miniatures, they're a little bit too large grain pigment. The pigment clumps a bit too much. There's Games Workshop paints, also called Citadel paint. There's Vallejo, which has game color, model color, etc. And then there's Army Painter. All three of these, Citadel, Vallejo, and Army Painter, are available at the shop. Carlton. You little insane cuddle slut. You can't be mad at him, can you? And it's almost done. Reading Go Z file. And done. I gotta put you back down. I gotta finish her figure. Get on down there, little buddy. Ugh. Okay. You can't really tell any difference unless you look extremely closely. And either way, it's too little difference to tell when it's actually printed. So now we're going to take this, we're going to export it as Nature Priest, and that's it. All that's left is the printing. Excuse me. Now, back a couple months ago, when Angie had a couple weeks in a row that she wasn't here, I did a little round robin class of painting with those for whom I had already made a figure. This was actually I had paused on making figures because I wasn't certain if certain of the people were going to stick around, and sure enough, Amy, Isaac, and Jose left the group to go play their own game outside. I wasn't certain how long Cody would play because he did have a tendency for a while of going in and out. And I wasn't ready to make one for Ethan because he was brand new to the group and I wanted to make sure he was going to stick around. That's why I waited until Tuesday to make his. And you are very, very welcome, Lauren. Now, Tuesday, it's your turn, Patrick. And my first thought was, your character in the tux gown. Maybe with a little clerical collar instead of a bow tie. Usual baby girl here. Yes. Anyway. Oh. Well, he is a spellcaster. They do typically wear robes. I don't think I'll make it poof out quite as far as the actors did. But I can never remember the name of the guy. I don't think it'll poof out quite as far, but he'll be wearing. Anyway. Now, when I print these out, this is what they look like. Obviously, this is an orc shaman. I then, because they're printed out in a clear resin. Then what I do, this is a previous print of Caroline's figure. It's the only one I happen to currently have at this state. I prime them with a gray primer. Let me bring this focus in a bit. I prime them with a gray primer and then give them a light brushing over with a slightly lighter gray. That makes it easier to see where the details are, like the hand, the facial details, the clothing details, and like the stuff on the book. So that's what it'll be like when I bring it to you. Bring the focus back in. I do not like autofocus, just as a side note, because it almost never works. And half the time I hear people trying to use it, they're like, okay, focus in. Come on, camera, focus. Focus. Focus, focus. So, anyway, that was our nature priest. What's her name again? I don't think my character ever actually heard her name said during play. He's heard it during the 3 weeks we've known each other. Or the week we've known each other, but hasn't heard it said in game. Thai Anastasia. Okay. I will admit, Valandar is a little bit of a PD Pureheart. He does what he thinks is right. He prefers to be within the law, but if he has to, he'll break the law to do the right thing. At least as he perceives it. Anyway. I think last night did more for determining your character's personality in the eyes of the rest of the group than the previous few weeks did. Especially the interaction with the woman from the Bard's College. Yep. I think you've discovered her personality by accident yesterday. Anyway, it is time for me to go ahead and say goodnight. Now, what I do at the end of every show is because YouTube frequently has lag, a good bit of lag, too much lag at times, I refresh the monitor, or refresh my view of the page in the background, and then I hold my hand up. I count from 5 to 1. When I get to 1, I say something goofy and wag my finger, and that's the cue. When I see it on my window, I stop the broadcast. So, it's kind of a little visual cue to make sure I don't cut myself off or just leave myself with a whole lot of dead air with me going, have I cut up the lag yet? So, let's go ahead and good night, everyone, and that's going to be 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And I have no idea what to say right now because I didn't come up with something earlier. I really should script that part. Oh well. Good night.